The silver threads of moonlight danced across Luna's fingertips as she stood on the crystalline balcony overlooking the mortal realm below. From her celestial perch, she could see the werewolf packs scattered across forests and mountains, their lives unfolding like intricate tapestries woven by her mother's divine will. Each thread represented a soul, a destiny, a mate bond waiting to be forged or severed according to the moon goddess's grand design. Luna had spent centuries observing these connections, learning to manipulate them with the precision of a master weaver, yet she remained forever on the outside looking in. Her mother, Selene, had made the rules clear from the moment Luna drew her first celestial breath. As the daughter of the moon goddess, she existed to serve fate, not experience it. Love was a luxury afforded to mortals, not to divine beings tasked with orchestrating the very concept. Luna's purpose was to guide mate bonds, to ensure the supernatural world maintained its delicate balance through carefully arranged partnerships that would strengthen bloodlines and preserve ancient magic. She was the architect of others' happiness, never the recipient. The irony wasn't lost on her that she possessed an intimate understanding of love's every nuance while being forbidden from experiencing its touch. She could sense the electric pull between destined mates from galaxies away, could feel the moment when two souls recognized their other half, could even manipulate the circumstances that brought them together. Yet her own heart remained an empty vessel, beautiful but barren, like a crystal goblet that could hold wine for others but never taste its sweetness. Tonight felt different, though Luna couldn't pinpoint why. The cosmic energies swirling around her seemed charged with anticipation, as if the universe itself held its breath. She traced patterns in the starlight that pooled in her palms, watching as the silvery substance formed and reformed into shapes that defied mortal comprehension. These were the building blocks of destiny, the raw materials from which mate bonds were forged, and tonight they hummed with an unusual frequency that made her celestial blood sing in response. "You're restless," Selene's voice cut through the cosmic silence like a blade wrapped in silk. The moon goddess materialized beside her daughter, her form shifting between solid flesh and pure moonbeam, depending on the angle of observation. Where Luna's beauty was ethereal and approachable, Selene radiated an otherworldly perfection that could drive mortals mad with longing or terror. "The bonds are shifting," Luna replied, not turning to face her mother. "Something significant is about to happen. I can feel it in the weave." Selene's laugh tinkled, like wind chimes made of starlight. "You've always been too sensitive to the cosmic currents. It's both your greatest strength and your most dangerous weakness. Is it weakness to care about the lives we shape? To wonder if our interference truly serves the greater good? It is weakness to question the natural order." Selene's tone sharpened, frost forming on the crystalline railing where her fingers touched. "We are not mortals, Luna. We do not have the luxury of doubt or the indulgence of personal desires. We are the shepherds of fate itself." Luna finally turned to study her mother's profile, noting the way Selene's jaw tensed whenever these conversations arose. There had been others before Luna, daughters who had questioned the cosmic laws, who had dared to reach for forbidden fruit. None had ended well. Their names had been erased from celestial records, their essences scattered across the void as warnings to those who might follow in their footsteps. "I understand my purpose," Luna said carefully. "But understanding doesn't eliminate curiosity." "Curiosity killed the constellation," Selene replied. and though her tone suggested jest, the underlying threat was unmistakable. Focus on your duties. The Blackwood Pack is experiencing unusual discord. Their alpha died without properly establishing succession, and the pack is fracturing. Such instability threatens the regional balance. Luna nodded, grateful for the distraction from their circular argument. She extended her consciousness toward the Blackwood territory, feeling for the tangled threads of their pack dynamics. What she found made her cosmic heart skip a beat. The bonds weren't just Freyida Euros. They were being actively severed by an outside force, something that moved through the pack like a virus, corrupting the very foundation of their supernatural society. "There's something else there," Luna murmured, her brow furrowing as she delved deeper into the psychic maelstrom surrounding the pack. "Something that doesn't belong." Celine's interest sharpened, her divine attention focusing like a laser on the disturbance her daughter had detected. "Show me." Luna opened her mind fully, allowing her mother to see through her cosmic awareness. Together they sifted through layers of supernatural energy until they found the source of the corruption, a lone wolf, powerful beyond measure, whose very presence seemed to unravel the careful order Luna spent centuries maintaining. His aura was wrong somehow, marked by something that made even the moon goddess recoil in surprise. "A road alpha," Celine breathed. "But how is he disrupting the bonds so thoroughly?" "He's been marked," Luna realized with growing horror, by the Shadow Court. The Shadow Court represented everything antithetical to the moon goddess's domain. Where Celine fostered love and connection, they sowed discord and isolation. Where mate bonds created strength through unity, the Shadow Court's magic fractured relationships and left supernatural beings vulnerable to corruption. For one of their marks to appear on a werewolf was unprecedented Eurozand, catastrophic. "He must be eliminated," Celine declared without hesitation. "Such corruption cannot be allowed to spread." "Wait," Luna found herself saying before she could stop the words. "Let me observe him first. If we can understand how the marking was applied, we might be able to prevent it from happening to others." Celine's eyes narrowed to silver slits. "Observation requires proximity. Proximity breeds attachment. Attachment leads to Eurosas." "I know the risks," Luna interrupted, surprising both herself and her mother with her boldness. "But I also know the importance of gathering intelligence before acting. Give me 3 days. If I can't determine the nature of his marking by then, I'll eliminate him myself." The moon goddess studied her daughter for a long moment, cosmic calculations flickering behind her ancient eyes. Finally, she nodded slowly. 3 days. But Luna Euros, remember who you are. Remember what you are. Do not let mortal concerns cloud your divine judgment. "I won't," Luna promised, though something deep in her celestial core whispered that this vow might prove impossible to keep. The descent from celestial realm to mortal plane always left Luna feeling slightly nauseated, as if her divine essence was being forcibly compressed into a form that could interact with physical reality. She materialized in a grove of ancient oaks at the edge of Blackwood territory, her immortal body now clothed in human flesh that looked deceptively fragile. Only her eyes retained their otherworldly silver luminescence, though she could dim them to near human blue when necessary. The forest around her thrummed with supernatural tension. She could feel the fractured pack bonds like phantom limbs, severed connections that left psychic wounds bleeding invisible energy into the earth. No wonder the local ecosystem seemed agitata euros even. The trees bent away from whatever corrupted presence moved through their midst. Luna followed the trail of disrupted bonds deeper into Blackwood territory, her bare feet silent on the forest floor. Her divine nature allowed her to pass unnoticed by most supernatural senses, appearing as nothing more than a particularly vivid dream or trick of moonlight to any werewolf who might glimpse her passage. This camouflage had served her well during countless missions to correct problematic mate bonds or eliminate threats to pack stability. The trail led to a clearing where the corruption was so thick she could taste it on her tongue, like bitter copper. At the center of the destruction sat a man who looked to be in his early 30s, though Luna's cosmic awareness told her his true age was closer to 2 centuries. His dark hair hung in waves that caught the filtered moonlight, and when he lifted his head to study her approach, she saw eyes the color of storm clouds, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said, his voice carrying a rough edge that spoke of screaming and smoke. "Though I expected someone more intimidating." Luna felt an unexpected flutter in her chest, a sensation so foreign she initially mistook it for indigestion. "You can see me? Hard to miss someone who glows like a nightlight." He rose to his feet with fluid grace that betrayed his alpha heritage, even corrupted as it was. "The question is what you are, exactly. You smell like moonbeams and taste like starlight, but you're solid enough to leave footprints. Taste like starlight?" Luna repeated, confused. "Psychic taste," he clarified, with a crooked smile that did interesting things to her respiratory system. "It's a side effect of the marking. I can sense the essential nature of supernatural beings now, whether I want to or not." Luna circled him slowly, studying the shadow quartz mark with her divine sight. What she saw made her stomach clench with sympathetic pain. The mark wasn't just corrupting his bonds with Uthasa Eurose, was slowly consuming his soul, feeding on his life force like a cosmic parasite. He was dying by degrees, and the corruption radiating from him was an unconscious attempt to share his burden with anyone unfortunate enough to form a connection. "It hurts," she observed quietly. "Every second of every day," he confirmed without a trace of self-pity. "But I'm guessing you already knew that. The real question is why you're here. Are you my executioner or my salvation?" "I haven't decided yet," Luna answered honestly. "What's your name?" "Fenris Kane, former Alpha of the Moonstone Pack, current harbinger of doom and destroyer of happiness." He spread his arms wide in a mockingly grand gesture. "And you are?" "Luna," she replied without thinking, then immediately regretted offering her true name. Something about his presence made her usual caution evaporate, like morning mist. "Luna," he repeated, and the way he shaped her name with his lips made her knees wobble treacherously. "Fitting, given your luminescent qualities. So, Luna, what brings a creature of moonbeams and starlight to my little corner of hell?" "Your marking," she said, forcing herself to focus on her mission. "It's disrupting the supernatural balance across 3 states. Pack bonds are failing, mates are being severed from each other, and the resulting chaos is threatening to expose our world to human attention." Ah. Fenris nodded sagely. "So I'm a problem that needs solving. I should have expected that. Every conversation I've had in the past month has ended with someone trying to kill me." "They failed," Luna observed, noting the complete lack of recent wounds on his body. "The marking makes me very difficult to kill," he explained with dark humor. "Turns out when you're slowly dying anyway, most fatal injuries just sort of bounce off. It's surprisingly effective as a defense mechanism, though I wouldn't recommend it as a lifestyle choice." Luna felt another unfamiliar flutter in her chest, this one accompanied by an almost overwhelming urge to reach out and touch him. The rational part of her mind catalogued this as a dangerous development, but the rest of her seemed fascinated by the way moonlight caught in his hair and the careful way he held himself, as if he was trying to contain something explosive. "How did you get marked?" she asked. Fenris's expression darkened, storm clouds gathering in his eyes. "My pack was betrayed by someone I trusted. She led Shadow Court agents directly to our den while most of our warriors were away. By the time I returned, everyone was dead except my younger sister, who they were using as bait." "They wanted you specifically?" "Apparently, alpha blood reacts differently to their corruption magic, creates a more potent weapon." His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I knew it was a trap, but I couldn't leave her to die. So I walked right into their ritual circle and let them do their worst." "Your Sistera Euros died anyway," he cut her off flatly. "The marking requires a sacrifice to bind properly. They used her life force to anchor the corruption to my soul." Luna felt something crack inside her chest, a sensation like celestial ice breaking under sudden pressure. The pain in his voice was a living thing, sharp enough to cut divine flesh. Without conscious thought, she took a step closer to him, her hand rising toward his face as if she could somehow absorb his suffering through touch. Fenris caught her wrist before she could make contact, his fingers burning, like brands against her skin. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. The corruption is contagious, and something tells me you're too important to risk contamination." "I can take care of myself," Luna said, though her voice came out breathier than intended. The sensation of his skin against hers was unlike anything in her celestial experiencia Euroselectric, and warm and achingly alive. "Can you?" His thumb traced across her pulse point, and she was mortified to realize her heart was racing like a hummingbird's wings. "Because right now, you're looking at me like I'm not a walking catastrophe, and that suggests either impressive confidence or dangerous naivety." "Perhaps both," Luna admitted, making no effort to pull away from his grip. They stood frozen in that moment, her wrist captured in his hand, while cosmic forces swirled around them, like a brewing storm. Lula could feel her carefully maintained control beginning to fray at the edges, her divine nature responding to something in him that cooled to depths she'd never known she possessed. "You should run," Fenris said quietly, but his fingers tightened on her wrist rather than releasing it. "Probably," Luna agreed, then shocked them both by stepping closer instead of away. The corruption radiating from him hit her divine senses like a physical blow, but underneath the Shadow Court's poison, she could taste something Elsa Euros, something pure and strong and heartbreakingly beautiful, his true essence, the core of who he was, beneath the magical cancer eating him alive. It blazed like a hidden star, steady and warm, despite everything trying to extinguish it. "What are you?" Fenris breathed, his free hand rising to cup her face with infinite gentleness. "Trouble," Luna whispered back, and for the first time in her immortal existence, she meant it as a promise rather than a warning. The moment stretched between them like spun glass, beautiful and fragile and doomed to shatter. Luna could feel the cosmic threads of fate weaving around them in patterns that defied her understanding, creating something that shouldn't exist according to every law her mother had taught her. She was a divine being, immune to the mate bond by her very nature. He was a corrupted alpha whose touch should repel rather than attract her. Yet something was building between them that felt like the birth of a new constellation. "This is impossible," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I've learned to specialize in impossible things lately," Fenris replied, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. Before Luna could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps shattered their fragile bubble of intimacy. She spun away from Fenris just as 3 werewolves emerged from the tree line, their eyes glowing with predatory hunger. The lead wolf was a massive man with prematurely grey hair and scars crisscrossing his exposed arms like a roadmap of violence. "Well, well," the scarred wolf drawled, his gaze moving between Luna and Fenris with calculating interest. "Looks like our corrupted friend has found himself a shiny new toy." "Walk away, Marcus," Fenris said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "This doesn't concern you or the Ironwood Pack. Everything that threatens pack stability concerns us," Marcus replied, cracking his knuckles with audible pops. "And you, Fenris Kane, are a walking violation of natural law. The regional alphas have decided you've outlived your usefulness." "Let me guess," Fenris said with dark amusement. "Trial by combat? Nothing so formal. Just 3 alphas against 1 corrupted rogue. Should be over quickly." Marcus's smile revealed teeth filed to predatory points. "Of course, if your little friend wants to run, we might be inclined to let her go, assuming she hasn't been contaminated by your touch." Luna felt fury rise in her chest like liquid fire. The casual dismissal, the assumption that she was helpless, the threat implicit in Marcus's wordser Eurosaw of it, triggered protective instincts she'd never known she possessed. Divine energy began to coalesce around her hands, silver light bleeding through her carefully maintained human facade. "Luna, don't," Fenris warned, apparently sensing the build-up of cosmic power. "They're not worth revealing yourself." "Listen to your friend," Marcus advised mockingly. "Though, I have to admit, I'm curious about what little light show she's preparing." Instead of answering, Luna stepped forward and placed herself between Fenris and the 3 alphas. The movement felt natural, despite being completely contrary to every instinct she'd developed over centuries of avoiding direct confrontation. She was supposed to be an observer, a manipulator of fate rather than a participant in it. Yet, watching these wolves threaten Fenris triggered something primal and protective that overrode divine protocol. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly, her voice carrying harmonics that made the forest itself seem to lean in and listen. Marcus laughed, but the sound held less confidence than before. "Big words for someone who looks like she weighs about as much as my left boot." "Looks can be deceiving," Luna replied, allowing her eyes to brighten from dim blue to blazing silver. The effect on the 3 alphas was immediate and dramatic. They stumbled backward as if struck by a physical force, their supernatural senses screaming warnings about the cosmic predator suddenly revealed in their midst. Marcus's confident expression melted into wide-eyed fear as his wolf instincts correctly identified Luna as something far more dangerous than any earthbound threat. Holy shit, one of the other alphas whispered. What is she? Something you can't fight, Fenris answered for her, and Luna could hear admiration mixed with concern in his voice. Something you should have run from the moment you scented her. Marcus, to his credit, rallied his courage with impressive speed. I don't care if she's the moon goddess herself. Cain is a threat that has to be eliminated, and anyone who stands with him shares his fate. Then you'll have to go through me, Luna said simply. What happened next violated several cosmic laws and would probably earn her a century of divine punishment, but Luna found she didn't care. Marcus lunged at her with alpha speed and strength, his fingernails elongating into claws mid-leap. Luna caught him out of the air with one hand, her fingers closing around his throat with casual ease that belied her delicate appearance. Silver fire erupted from her skin, washing over Marcus in waves that made him scream in harmonics only supernatural beings could hear. Luna wasn't trying to kill Hema Euros, not Yeta Euros, but the divine energy coursing through her touch was burning away layers of mortal pretense to reveal the small, petty creature beneath his alpha posturing. You hurt people because you enjoy it, Luna observed, reading his essence with crystalline clarity. You use your position to take things that don't belong to you. You've broken pack bonds for fun and scattered families because their happiness offended you. Marcus gurgled, something that might have been a denial, but Luna's cosmic awareness showed her the truth of his actions stretching back decades. The other two alphas were backing away rapidly, apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor when facing an enraged celestial being. Luna, Fenris said softly, and something in his tone made her look over at him. Let him go. He was going to kill you, she replied, confused by his intervention. Yes, he was. But if you kill him like this, you'll regret it later. Trust me on this. Luna studied Fenris's face, reading layers of meaning in his storm grey eyes. He understood what it meant to cross lines that couldn't be uncrossed, to make choices that would haunt you forever. His plea wasn't about mercy. For Marcusa, Eurozet was about preserving something essential in Luna that divine vengeance would destroy. With visible effort, she loosened her grip and allowed Marcus to drop to the ground where he lay gasping and shaking. The divine fire faded from her skin, though her eyes remained blazing silver as she addressed the three fallen alphas. The next time you come for him, I'll kill all of you, she said conversationally. Slowly, creatively, in ways that will make other alphas wake up screaming for generations. Do we understand each other? Marcus managed a jerky nod, then scrambled to his feet and fled into the forest with his companions close behind. Their panicked retreat crashed through the underbrush like a stampeding herd, leaving behind only the acrid scent of fierce wet and the echo of whimpering. Luna watched them disappear before turning back to Fenris, suddenly self-conscious about her dramatic display of power. Divine beings weren't supposed to interfere directly in mortal conflicts, and she'd just violated that prohibition in spectacular fashion. Worse, she'd done it for personal reasons rather than cosmic necessity. That was probably a mistake, she said quietly. Probably, Fenris agreed, moving to stand beside her. But it was a magnificent mistake. I've never seen anyone make 3 alphas wet themselves and run away like scolded children. They'll bring others, Luna pointed out. More powerful alphas. Maybe entire packs. Let them come, Fenris said with a shrug. I was dead anyway. At least now I'll have interesting company while I wait for the end. Luna turned to study his profile, noting the way he held himself with careful dignity despite his casual words about dying. The Shadow Court's mark was definitely accelerating, its corruption spreading through his system like cosmic gangrene. She could see the tendrils of poison reaching toward his heart, his brain, the core of his being. He had weeks at most before the marking consumed everything that made him who he was. I might be able to help, she said impulsively. Fenris looked at her with surprise. Help how? I'm not entirely sure yet, Luna admitted, but I have certain abilities that might counteract the corruption. Abilities like turning 3 alpha werewolves into whimpering children with the power of your glowing eyes, among other things, Luna said dryly. The real question is whether you trust me enough to let me try. Fenris was quiet for a long moment, his gaze searching her face as if he could read her intentions written in the silver of her irises. You know what the strangest part of this whole situation is? He finally said. What? For the first time since the marking, the constant pain has stopped. Standing here with you, talking to you, watching you face down 3 alphas like an avenging Angela Eurozinen of it hurts. The corruption is still there, still eating me alive, but somehow you make it bearable. Luna felt her breath catch in her throat. That's impossible. The Shadow Court's magic doesn't just pause for conversation. No, Fenris agreed, stepping closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. But maybe it pauses for something else, something neither of us expected to find. The implication hung between them, like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Luna knew she should deny it, should explain the cosmic laws that made what he was suggesting categorically impossible. But looking into his stone-grey eyes, feeling the way her divine essence reached toward him like a flower turning toward sunlight, she found herself hoping he was right. This complicates things, she said weakly. Everything worthwhile is complicated, Fenris replied, reaching out to tuck a strand of her silver hair behind her ear. The question is whether it's worth the complication. Before Luna could answer, her cosmic awareness suddenly screamed a warning. She spun toward the forest edge, just as a figure materialized from the shadows Eurozenet, one of the fleeing alphas, but something far more dangerous. The newcomer wore the appearance of a beautiful woman with midnight hair and eyes like black stars, but Luna's divine sight showed her true nature. A Shadow Court operative, ancient and powerful and radiating malevolent. Hunger. How touching, the Shadow Woman purred, her voice like silk over razor blades. The Moon Goddess's little princess has found herself a pet. Morrigan, Fenris growled, and Luna could feel his entire body tense with recognition and rage. Hello, darling, Morrigan replied, with a smile that revealed teeth like black pearls. Miss me? Luna felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with horrifying clarity. This was the traitor who had betrayed Fenris's pack, who had led the Shadow Court to his family, and orchestrated the ritual that marked him. She was also, Luna realized with growing dread, far more powerful than any Shadow Court operative had a right to be. You're one of the fallen, Luna breathed, recognizing the twisted remnants of celestial essence that clung to Morrigan like perfume. How perceptive, Morrigan said with mock applause. Though I prefer liberated, your mother's rules never did sit well with me, especially the ones about staying in our assigned lanes. You were cast out for good reason, Luna replied, silver fire beginning to coalesce around her hands again. "I was cast out for loving a mortal," Morrigan corrected, her black star eyes glittering with ancient pain and fury. "For daring to believe that divine beings deserved the same happiness we orchestrated for lesser creatures. Sound familiar, little princess?" The words hit Luna like a physical blow because they did sound familiar, terrifyingly familiar. She thought of her mother's warnings, of the other daughters who had questioned cosmic law and been erased from existence. She thought of her own growing feelings for Fenris and the way her divine nature seemed to be reshaping itself around his presence. "I'm nothing like you," Luna said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Aren't you?" Morrigan tilted her head with predatory interest. "You're standing here defending a corrupted alpha against your own kind. You've revealed your true nature to protect him. You're even now considering ways to break cosmic law to save his life. Tell me, princess, how exactly? Are we different?" Luna opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Because Morrigan was right, and they both knew it. Every choice Luna had made since meeting Fenris had been a step away from her divine duties, and towards something that looked suspiciously like the forbidden love that had damned her predecessor. "Leave her alone," Fenris said, moving to stand protectively in front of Luna. "Your quarrel is with me." "Oh, my dear boy," Morrigan laughed, the sound like breaking crystal. "My quarrel has always been with the cosmic order that says beings like us aren't allowed to choose our own destinies. You were just a convenient tool for demonstrating the hypocrisy of divine law." "Tool," Luna repeated, her cosmic awareness suddenly focusing on details she'd missed before. "Did you really think it was coincidence that brought you to his clearing tonight?" Morrigan asked with false sweetness. "That your divine senses just happened to detect his corruption at exactly the right moment? Oh, princess, you're much more naive than I expected." The truth hit Luna like a collapsing star. The unusual cosmic energies she'd sensed earlier, the way Fenris's corruption had seemed to call specifically to her, even the timing of the three alphas' attacker Euros, none of it had been natural. Morrigan had orchestrated the entire encounter, manipulating events to force Luna into exactly the position she now found herself in. "You planned this," Luna said numbly. "Every beautiful, tragic moment," Morrigan confirmed. "Though I must admit, the chemistry between you two exceeded my wildest expectations. The way you looked at him, the way you defended him, the adorable way you're both pretending this is anything other than a mate bonder Euroset's all so deliciously forbidden." "We don't have a mate bond," Luna protested, even as part of her whispered that the denial was a lie. "Don't you?" Morrigan's smile widened. "Then why can your presence ease his pain? Why does your divine essence reach for his, like a flower seeking sunlight? Why are you willing to risk everything your mother taught you for a corrupted alpha you've known for less than an hour?" Each question was a blade between Luna's ribs, cutting away her carefully constructed defenses to expose the truth she'd been desperately trying to avoid. She could feel it now that Morrigan had forced her to acknowledge Eta Euros, the invisible thread connecting her to Fenris, the cosmic recognition that sang in her bones whenever he was near. "It's impossible," she whispered. "So was I, once upon a time," Morrigan replied gently. "Yet here we are, proof that the universe occasionally has a sense of humor about its own rules." "What do you want?" Fenris demanded, apparently tired of cryptic revelations. "What I've always wanted," Morrigan said, her form beginning to shift and expand as shadow wings unfurled from her shoulders. To show the cosmic powers that their precious order is built on hypocrisy and lies, Luna will either choose love and damn herself as I was damned, or she'll choose duty and destroy the one being in all existence who could make her complete. Either way, Celine's perfect daughter becomes an object lesson in the impossibility of divine law. There's a third option, Luna said quietly, divine power beginning to build around her like a gathering storm. Oh? Morrigan raised one elegant eyebrow. And what might that be? I kill you, Luna replied simply. The battle that followed shattered several ancient trees and left a crater in the forest floor that would puzzle geologists for decades. Morrigan fought with the desperate fury of the damned, wielding shadow magic that could corrode divine essence on contact. Luna met her with silver fire and cosmic force, her power amplified by a protective rage that surprised both combatants with its intensity. But for all her newfound motivation, Luna was still young by celestial standards, her combat experience limited to theoretical knowledge rather than practical application. Morrigan had spent millennia perfecting her forbidden arts, and the Shadow Court's corruption had made her stronger than any fallen should be. The end came when Morrigan's shadow whips wrapped around Luna's throat, the dark magic beginning to drain her divine essence like poison in her veins. Luna felt her strength ebbing, her silver fire dimming as the corruption ate away at her immortal core. "Don't look so surprised," Morrigan purred as Luna sank to her knees. "Did you really think love would be enough to overcome centuries of experience?" "No," Luna gasped, her vision beginning to darken around the edges. "But I thought this might help." She reached into the cosmic weave with the last of her strength, not to attack Morrigan directly, but to do something far more devastating. With surgical precision, Luna severed every mate bond within 100-mile radius, releasing a psychic shockwave that hit every supernatural being in the region like a sledgehammer to the soul. Morrigan screamed as the wave struck her, the sound containing harmonics of pure anguish. As a fallen who had once been responsible for creating mate bonds, she was particularly vulnerable to their destruction. The shadow whips around Luna's throat dissolved as Morrigan collapsed, her ancient form convulsing as psychic feedback tore through her consciousness. Luna used the momentary reprieve to break free, stumbling away from her fallen opponent, while drawing on her remaining power to prepare a finishing blow. But before she could strike, Fenris was suddenly there, moving with impossible speed to intercept her attack. "Stop," he said urgently, catching her wrists in his hands. "Look at her." Luna followed his gaze to where Morrigan lay curled in on herself, shadow wings folded protectively around her body as she sobbed with the broken sound of someone who had lost everything twice. The psychic feedback from the severed bonds hadn't just hurt Hera Eurozet, had stripped away the layers of corruption and rage that had sustained her for millennia, leaving behind only the raw grief of a divine being who had sacrificed everything for love and received only exile in return. "She's dying," Fenris said quietly. The corruption was the only thing keeping her anchored to this realm. Without it, Luna could see it now with her cosmic Saita Euros Thee, where Morrigan's essence was beginning to fray at the edges, her connection to physical reality dissolving like smoke in the wind. She was fading back into the void, and this time there would be no return. "Good," Luna said, but the word tasted like ash in her mouth. Is it? Fenris asked gently. She's what you could become if you choose love over duty. She's also what you could become if you choose duty over love. Either path leads to the same destination, a hero's exile from everything you've ever known. Luna stared at Morrigan's fading form, seeing her own potential future written in the other woman's tears. The Shadow Court's corruption was already beginning to eat away at the bonds Luna had severed, seeking to fill the vacuum she'd created with its own twisted version of connection. Within hours, every supernatural being in the region would be vulnerable to the same marking that was killing Fenris. I have to fix this, Luna realized with growing horror. The bonds are euros if I don't restore Thema euros. The corruption will spread, Fenris finished. Everyone will end up like me. Luna closed her eyes, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders like a lead cloak. She could restore the bonds. The doing so would require her to return to her celestial duties and abandon any possibility of exploring her feelings for Fenris. Or she could stay with him and watch the supernatural world collapse into chaos as Shadow Court corruption consumed every meaningful connection between souls. Choose quickly, princess, Morrigan whispered from the ground, her voice already growing distant as her form continued to fade. The corruption spreads with every heartbeat. Soon it will be too late to stop. Luna opened her eyes to find Fenris watching her with an expression of infinite sadness and understanding. He already knew what she had to choose, had probably known from the moment he realized what she was. Divine beings didn't get happy, ending Sir Euros. They got duty and responsibility, and the endless ache of watching others experience the joy they themselves were denied. I'm sorry, she whispered, reaching up to touch his face one last time. Don't be, Fenris replied, leaning into her touch with the desperation of a drowning man grasping at moonbeams. I've had more life in the past hour with you than in 2 centuries of existence. That has to count for something. Luna felt tears she didn't know she could shed, trailing down her cheeks like liquid starlight. It counts for everything, she whispered back, memorizing the way his eyes reflected her silver glow, the precise angle of his jaw, the warmth of his skin against her palm. But even as they shared this moment of profound connection, Luna could feel the cosmic weave unraveling around them. The severed bonds were creating ripples of instability that spread outward like cracks in reality itself. Soon those cracks would become chasms, and the entire supernatural ecosystem would collapse into the void. With movements that felt like tearing pieces from her own soul, Luna stepped back from Fenris and raised her hands toward the sky. Divine energy poured from her fingertips in streams of silver fire, reaching up through the layers of reality to touch the cosmic loom where fate itself was woven. She began the delicate work of restoration, reweaving the bonds she had destroyed with surgical precision. Each reconnection sent shockwaves through her divine essence, the psychic feedback making her stagger as she fought to maintain her concentration. She could feel the Shadow Court's corruption pushing back against her efforts, seeking to twist every restored bond into something dark and possessive. It took all her skill and power to keep the weave clean, to ensure that each connection she rebuilt would serve love rather than domination. Luna, Fenris said urgently, and she opened eyes she didn't remember closing to find him supporting her swaying form. You're burning yourself out. The restoration is taking too much from you." He was right. Luna could feel her divine essence being consumed by the massive working, her immortal strength flowing out through her fingertips to fuel the cosmic repairs. But she was so close now, with only a few dozen bonds left to restore. If she could just hold on, a little longer a euro's enough. Celine's voice cut through the clearing like a blade of ice, her divine presence arriving with the force of a colliding moon. Luna's mother materialized in a pillar of silver light that made the shadows dance and retreat, her expression a mask of cosmic fury that could have frozen entire star systems. Behind her came an entire host of celestial beings, Euros, Luna's aunts and uncles, the lesser deities who served the moon goddess's court, even some of the abstract concepts given form that rarely bothered with physical manifestation. "Step away from my daughter," Celine commanded, her gaze fixed on Fenris with the intensity of a stellar collapse. "Mother, whiter euros," Luna began, but Celine's raised hand silenced her with divine authority. "You have violated every law of our existence," Celine said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the very air tremble. "Interfering directly in mortal affairs, revealing your true nature to unauthorized individuals, forming emotional attachments to creatures beneath your stationer euros and, now this." She gestured to the partially restored weave around them. "Destroying and rebuilding the cosmic order on a whim." "It wasn't a whim," Luna protested, forcing herself to stand without Fenris's support, even though her legs shook with exhaustion. "Morrigan wassa euros." "Morrigan was contained," Celine interrupted coldly. "Her influence limited to a single corrupted alpha who would have died within days regardless. Your interference has turned a minor inconvenience into a cosmic catastrophe." Luna felt the words like physical blows, each one driving home the magnitude of her failures. She had acted on emotion rather than wisdom, had let her feelings for Fenris cloud her divine judgment until she'd nearly brought about the collapse of supernatural society. The realization was devastating, but not as devastating as what came next. "The penalty for such violations is dissolution," Celine continued remorselessly. "Your essence will be scattered across the void, your name erased from all celestial records, your very existence undone, as if you had never drawn breath." "No," Fenris said quietly, but his voice carried such absolute conviction that even the assembled celestial host turned to look at him. "The blame is mine, not hers." Celine's laugh was like the sound of ice sheets cracking. "A mortal presuming to take responsibility for divine choices? How quaint." "Luna acted to save innocent lives from corruption I helped spread," Fenris continued, apparently unbothered by the moon goddesses. "Disdain. Everything she did was a response to threats I created through my mere existence. If anyone deserves punishment, it's me. Your fate was already sealed the moment the Shadow Court marked you," Celine replied dismissively. "What happens to Luna is a separate matter entirely." "Is it?" Fenris asked, and something in his tone made Luna's cosmic awareness suddenly focus on details she'd been too distracted to notice before. The thread connecting her to Fenris wasn't just a mate. Bonda Eurozet was something far more complex and unprecedented. Where normal mate bonds linked two souls in complementary partnership, this connection seemed to be actively rewriting both of their essential natures. Luna's divine essence was bleeding into him, purifying the Shadow Court's corruption, while his alpha nature was grounding her cosmic power in ways that made it more stable and precise. "Impossible," Celine breathed. apparently seeing the same thing Luna had discovered. "Not impossible," corrected a new voice from the edge of the clearing. "Just unprecedented." The speaker who emerged from the forest was unlike any being Luna had ever encountered. They appeared to be simultaneously ancient and newborn, their form shifting between states of matter, as if they couldn't decide whether to exist as solid flesh or pure energy. When they spoke, reality itself seemed to bend slightly to accommodate their words. "Forgive the intrusion," the stranger continued with a smile that contained multitudes. "But I've been observing this situation with great interest." "And you are?" Celine demanded, though Luna could see uncertainty creeping into her mother's divine composure. "I am change," the being replied simply. "The force that drives evolution, the pressure that transforms stars into new configurations, the reason why cosmic laws adapt rather than break when faced with sufficient catalyst." Luna felt her breath catch as the implications hit her. Change was one of the fundamental forces of existence, older than most gods and possessed of authority that transcended normal celestial hierarchies. If change itself had taken an interest in their situation, the bond between your daughter and this alpha represents something new, change continued, their form solidifying into something more humanoid, though no less alien. A fusion of divine and mortal natures that creates possibilities neither could achieve alone. "Abomination," Celine spat. "A violation of the natural order." "The natural order evolves," Change replied mildly. "What seems like violation today becomes foundation tomorrow. Your own laws exist because previous iterations proved insufficient for changing realities." Luna watched her mother's face as the weight of Change's words sank in. Celine had built her cosmic authority on the assumption that divine law was immutable, that the order she maintained represented ultimate truth rather than one possible configuration among many. To accept that her rules might need fundamental revision would undermine everything she believed about her own purpose. "Even if that were true," Celine said carefully, "the damage has already been done. Luna's actions have created instabilities that threaten the entire weave." "Have they?" Change asked, gesturing to the partially restored bonds floating around them, like aurora made tangible. "Or have they created opportunities for improvement?" With movements too swift for Luna's divine sight to follow, Change reached into the cosmic weave and began manipulating the restored bonds with impossible delicacy. Instead of simply repairing the connections Luna had severed, they were restructuring them entirely, creating something that retained the strength of the original bonds, while eliminating the vulnerabilities that Shadow caught. Corruption could exploit. "Fascinating," Change murmured as they worked. "The disruption pattern your daughter created actually makes the entire network more resilient. It's as if she instinctively knew which connections were weakest and removed them to prevent cascade failures." Luna stared at the evolving weave with growing amazement. She had acted purely on instinct when she severed the bonds, driven by desperation and the need to stop Morrigan's attack. But now she could see the underlying logic of her choices. The way each cut had eliminated pathways that Shadow-caught magic could have used to spread its influence. "Instinct guided by unprecedented cosmic awareness," Change observed, apparently reading her thoughts. "The bond with this alpha doesn't just give her access to his grounding influencia Eurose, gives her a mortal perspective on divine power. She can see the weave from both sides now, understanding not just how bonds function, but how they feel to those who experience them. That's... Celine began, then stopped as the 4 implications became clear. Revolutionary, Change finished. A divine being who can truly understand mortal experience, who can craft bonds based on empathy rather than abstract theory. The potential applications are limitless. Luna felt a flutter of hope in her chest, though she tried not to let it show on her face. Change was essentially arguing that her bond with Fenris made her more effective at her divine duties, not less. If Celine could be convinced to see things that way. And what of the corruption? Celine asked, her gaze shifting to Fenris. The Shadow Court's mark remains active. Actually, Change said with obvious amusement. It doesn't. Luna's cosmic awareness immediately focused on Fenris, and she gasped at what she found. The corruption that had been eating him alive when they first met was gone. Not destroyed or suppressed, but actually transformed into something entirely different. Where once dark tendrils of poison had wound through his essence, she now saw threads of silver light that pulsed in harmony with her own divine nature. How? Fenris asked, apparently feeling the change within himself. Divine essence is naturally purifying, Change explained. When Luna formed a bond with you, her power began cleansing the corruption automatically. The process accelerated during your shared emotional momensa euros. Every time she felt protective of you, every moment of connection deepened the purification. But the shallow quartz marks are supposed to be permanent, Celine protested. They are, when applied to purely mortal subjects, Change agreed. But Fenris is no longer purely mortal. The bond has made him something newer euros part alpha, part living anchor for divine power. The corruption couldn't survive in an essence that was becoming increasingly divine. Luna reached out tentatively with her cosmic senses, marveling at what she found in Fenris's transformed nature. He was still, himself a euros still, the strong, protective alpha who had been willing to sacrifice everything for his sister's life. But now that core was wrapped in layers of silver light that sang in harmony with her own power, creating a resonance that amplified both their abilities. This is what Morrigan was really after, Luna realized suddenly. Not just to corrupt him, but to prove that divine and mortal natures could be combined. She wanted to show that the cosmic laws were arbitrary, and, in a sense, she succeeded, Change said approvingly. Though not in the way she intended. Rather than creating a weapon against divine order, the marking became the catalyst for divine evolution. Celine was quiet for a long time, her ancient mind working through possibilities that had never existed before. Luna could see the internal struggle playing out across her mother's Fecarisa Euros, the clash between millennia of rigid thinking and the undeniable evidence that Change presented. Even if all of this is true, Celine said finally, it doesn't address the fundamental problem. Divine beings cannot be allowed to form romantic attachments. Such bonds cloud judgment and create conflicts of interest that threaten cosmic stability. Cannot be allowed? Change repeated, with raised eyebrows. Or have not been allowed? There's a significant difference between cosmic law and cosmic tradition. The distinction is irrelevant, Celine replied firmly. The rules exist for good reason. Do they? Change asked mildly. Or do they exist Because that's how things have always been done. Before Celine could respond, Change gestured to the transformed bonds floating around them like living constellation. Look at what your daughter accomplished in a single night. She neutralized a Shadow Court operative who had been a threat for millennia. She purified corruption that your own forces couldn't touch. She created bond structures that are more resilient than anything in your current archives. And she did all of this because she was motivated by love rather than duty. Love makes beings unpredictable, Celine argued. Love makes beings invested, Change corrected. There's a difference between acting from obligation and acting from genuine care. Your daughter cares about the mortals whose bonds she shapes. That makes her better at her job, not worse. Luna watched her mother grapple with concepts that challenged every assumption about divine nature. She could see Celine wavering, cosmic certainty beginning to crack under the weight of Change's logic. There would have to be safeguards, Celine said slowly. Restrictions, ways to ensure that personal feelings don't override cosmic necessity. Of course, Change agreed readily. All evolution requires balance. The question is whether you're willing to evolve your own perspectives to accommodate new realities. I need time to consider this, Celine said finally. The implications are extensive. Time you have, Change replied with a smile. But while you consider, perhaps you should observe. Let Luna continue her work with her new perspective and see what innovations emerge. Judge the results, not the methods. Celine turned to study Luna's face, her silver eyes searching for something that seemed to elude her. You understand, but if I allow this, you'll be under constant scrutiny. There's any failure will be seen as proof that Change's theories are wrong. I understand, Luna replied, though her voice trembled slightly with the magnitude of what was being offered. And you, Celine's gaze shifted to Fenris. You comprehend that binding yourself to a divine being means accepting responsibilities that will fundamentally alter your existence. You'll be expected to serve cosmic purposes that may conflict with your personal desires. I've been bound to cosmic purposes since the moment I became an alpha, Fenris replied steadily. The only difference is that now I have a choice in how I serve them. Celine nodded slowly, then raised her hand to address the assembled celestial host. We return to our realm. Luna will remain here to complete the bond restoration and monitor the results of these innovations. Her progress will be evaluated at the next cosmic convergence. Mother, Luna said impulsively. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Celine replied with a warning look. You still have to prove that love enhances rather than compromises divine judgment. That's a considerably more difficult task than purifying a few corrupted bonds. With that ominous pronouncement, Celine and her entourage dissolved into pillars of silver light that shot upward toward the celestial realm, leaving Luna alone with Fenris and the enigmatic figure of Change. Well, Change said cheerfully, that went better than expected. I was prepared for at least 3 cosmic tantrums and possibly a small stellar war. This is really happening? Luna asked, hardly daring to believe it. It's really happening, Change confirmed. Though I should mention that the path ahead won't be easy. You're pioneering an entirely new form of existence, and there will be those who want to see you fail. Like who? Fenris asked, moving to stand protectively beside Luna. Other divine beings who feel threatened by change. Mortals who believe gods should remain distant and unknowable. shadow-caught remnants who want revenge for Morrigan's defeat. Change's expression grew serious. And most dangerous of all, your own doubts. The moment you start questioning whether love really does make you better at your divine duties, that's when the whole experiment falls apart. Luna felt Fenris's hand slip into hers, his fingers intertwining with her own, in a gesture that somehow made the cosmic weight on her shoulders feel manageable rather than crushing. "We'll face it together," she said simply. "Together," Fenris agreed, and in his voice she heard an echo of the same absolute conviction that had made him willing to face the Shadow Court's ritual to save his sister. Change smiled at their joined hands, their form beginning to shift back toward the abstract. Evolution is never easy, but it's always worthwhile. Make sure you remember that when things get difficult. "Wait," Luna called as change started to fade. "Why did you help us? What do you gain from our success?" "I gain the satisfaction of watching the universe become more than it was," Change replied, their voice growing distant. "That's what I Donya Euro's eye help things become what they're meant to be, rather than what they've always been." And then they were gone, leaving Luna and Fenris alone in the clearing, with the aurora, like bonds, still dancing around them, and the enormous task of proving that love could coexist with cosmic responsibility. "So," Fenris said, after a moment of comfortable silence, "what happens now?" Luna looked up at him, marveling at the way her divine sight now showed her the silver threads of their bond weaving through both their essences, like living art. "Now we finish restoring the weave, and then we figure out how to be ourselves without breaking the universe." "Sounds like a Tuesday," Fenris replied, with the crooked smile that made her knees weak. "Every day is going to be a Tuesday from now on," Luna warned. "Cosmic responsibility doesn't take weekends off." "Good thing I like a challenge," Fenris said, pulling her closer until her head rested against his chest and she could hear the steady rhythm of his heart. Luna closed her eyes and let herself savor the memento euros, the warmth of his arms around her, the way their bond hummed with contentment, the sense that despite all the uncertainties ahead, they had found something worth fighting for. When she opened her eyes again and raised her hands to complete the bond restoration, the silver fire that flowed from her fingertips was brighter and more precise than ever before. She could feel Fenris's strength anchoring her power, keeping it steady as she worked to rebuild connections that would be stronger and more beautiful than their predecessors. For the first time in her immortal existence, Luna understood why the mortals she served spoke of love as if it were magic, because it was magica euros the kind that transformed not just individuals but entire realities, that made impossible things not only possible but inevitable. As the last of the severed bonds snapped back into place with crystalline harmony, Luna allowed herself a small smile. Change had been right about one thing: Euro's evolution was never easy. But as she stood in Fenris's arms, watching their combined power weave new patterns in the fabric of fate itself, she thought it might just be worth every challenge that lay ahead. The forest around them gradually returned to its normal nocturnal symphony, the supernatural tension that had gripped it finally dissipating as the restored bonds settled into their new configurations. But Luna knew this was just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring new responsibilities, new tests of their unprecedented partnership, new opportunities to prove that love really could enhance, rather than compromise, divine judgment. She was ready for all of it. They were ready for all of it. And If the universe had a problem with that, well, a Eurozet could take the matter up with change. After all, some rules were meant to evolve. 3 months later, Luna stood in a different forest clearing, watching with satisfaction as a newly matched pair of wolves discovered their mate bond for the first time. The connection she had crafted for them was unlike anything in the traditional Archivessa Euros, stronger, more flexible, capable of adapting to the changes both partners would undergo throughout their long lives. Together. "You're getting good at this," Fenris observed from his position leaning against a nearby tree. "That bond is practically architectural in its complexity." "Practice makes perfect," Luna replied, though she couldn't quite hide her pride in the work. Plus, having a constant reminder of what it feels like from the inside doesn't hurt. She gestured to the silver thread that connected them, visible now to anyone with sufficient supernatural sight. Rather than hiding their bond, they had decided to make it obviouser Eurozep partly as a statement of defiance, but mostly because secrecy felt like an admission of shame. "Any regrets yet?" Fenris asked, the question he posed every few weeks as if testing the stability of their unusual arrangement. "Only that it took me this long to understand what I was missing," Luna replied honestly. "What about you? Still happy being the first male mate to a divine being?" "Ecstatic," Fenris said dryly. "Though I could do without the constant stream of curious supernaturals who want to study our bond like we're a science experiment." Luna laughed, remembering the parade of researchers, scholars, and simply nosy individuals who had sought them out over the past few months. Their relationship had become something of a sensation in supernatural circles, with theories ranging from the romantic to the apocalyptic about what their bond might mean for the future. "Dr. Voss wasn't that bad," she protested. And her research into bond resonance patterns could be genuinely useful. She wanted to measure our aura synchronization during intimate moments, Fenris reminded her. "That crosses several lines I'm not comfortable crossing." "Fair point," Luna conceded. "Though I have to admit I'm curious about the results myself." "You would be," Fenris said with fond exasperation. "Sometimes I think you're more scientist than goddess. Why not both?" Luna asked, moving to stand beside him as they watched the newly bonded pair wander deeper into the forest together. Change was right about evolution requiring balance. Maybe what the cosmic order needs is more curiosity and less certainty. "Speaking of which," Fenris said, his tone growing more serious, "I had an interesting conversation with Marcus yesterday." Luna's eyebrows rose in surprise. The alpha who had originally come to kill Fenris had become an unlikely ally over the past months, though their relationship remained cautious on both sides. "He's been asking questions about bond modification," Fenris continued. "Apparently his pack has been struggling with some inherited trauma patterns that traditional mate bonds can't resolve. And he wants us to intervene? He wants to know if your new techniques could help break cycles of abuse and dysfunction that have been plaguing his pack for generations." Luna felt her cosmic awareness automatically reaching toward the Ironwood Pack's territory, sensing the tangled knots of damaged connections that Fenris described. Traditional bonds were indeed powerless against such ingrained patterns. Euros they could only work with what existed, not transform fundamental dysfunction into health. But her evolved abilities, enhanced by the mortal perspective she'd gained through her bond with Fenris, might be able to do more. She could potentially restructure existing bonds to eliminate toxic elements while preserving the positive connections underneath. "It's risky," she said thoughtfully. That kind of deep restructuring could have unintended consequences. Everything we do is risky, Fenris pointed out. The question is whether the potential benefits outweigh the dangers. Luna considered this, weighing cosmic responsibility against the opportunity to genuinely help a struggling pack. This was exactly the sort of situation Celine had warned her about a Euro's personal relationships, creating pressure to use divine power in ways that might not serve the greater good. But as she studied the patterns of dysfunction radiating from Ironwood territory, Luna realized that her mother's concerns were based on false assumptions. Her bond with Fenris didn't make her more likely to abuse her power. Eurozet made her more aware of the real costs when supernatural beings suffered from broken connections. I'll need to examine their pack structure directly, she said finally. And we'll have to develop new techniques specifically for trauma resolution. It won't be quick or easy. The best things never are, Fenris replied, echoing words Change had spoken to them months earlier. As they prepared to leave the clearing, Luna felt a familiar flutter of cosmic awareness that indicated divine attention focused on their location. She looked up through the forest canopy to where she could sense her mother's presence, observing from the celestial realm. Celine had been watching more frequently lately, though she had yet to offer any official judgment on the success or failure of their experimental arrangement. Luna suspected her mother was waiting for some dramatic crisis that would prove love and duty were fundamentally incompatible. Instead, what she was getting was a steady stream of innovations and improvements in bond-crafting techniques that were already being adopted by other cosmic entities. Love, it turned out, really did make Luna better at her Joba Euros, not because it eliminated her objectivity, but because it gave her genuine investment in the happiness of those she served. She's watching again, Fenris observed, apparently sensing the same divine attention. Let her watch, Luna replied, with newfound confidence. We have nothing to hide. Nothing except that little experiment you've been working on, Fenris said with a meaningful look. Luna felt heat rise in her cheeks. The little experiment he referred to was actually a massive undertaking she'd been pursuing in Secreta Euros, an attempt to use their unique bond as a template for creating entirely new types of connections between divine and mortal beings. If successful, her work could revolutionize the entire supernatural hierarchy, allowing for collaborative partnerships between gods and mortals that had never been possible before. If it failed, well, the consequences could be catastrophic enough to justify every warning Celine had ever given about the dangers of divine beings forming emotional attachments. That's different, Luna said defensively. That's theoretical research. Theoretical research that could fundamentally alter the nature of existence itself, Fenris replied dryly. Just saying. Every great discovery starts with theoretical research, Luna countered. And besides, I'm being careful. I'm only using our bond as a model, not actually attempting to replicate it. Yet, Fenris added pointedly. Yet, Luna agreed, because honesty had become a cornerstone of their relationship. But when I do decide to try replication, you'll be the first to know. I'd better be, Fenris said, pulling her into his arms with the easy familiarity of an established couple. We're partners in this cosmic revolution, remember? No secret world-changing experiments without backup. Luna melted into his embrace, marveling once again at how perfectly they fit together, despite coming from completely different realms of existence. The bond between them had only grown stronger over the months, developing new facets and depths that continued to surprise both of them. "I love you," she said impulsively, the words still feeling strange and wonderful on her tongue. "I love you too," Fenris replied, his voice warm with the contentment that had replaced the pain that used to define him. "Even when you're plotting to overthrow the cosmic order. Especially when I'm plotting to overthrow the cosmic order," Luna corrected with a grin. As they stood there in the peaceful clearing, surrounded by the evidence of their successful collaboration and the promise of challenges yet to come, Luna felt a deep sense of rightness settle into her bones. This was what she had been meant. Fora Euro Xenot cold, distant observation of mortal happiness, but active participation in creating joy and connection wherever it was needed. Change had been right about evolution requiring balance. But what Luna was discovering was that some kinds of balance could only be achieved through apparent contradictioner Euro-Z-divine beings who embraced mortality, immortal love that grew stronger rather than stagnating, cosmic power guided by emotional investment rather than detached duty. The universe was vast and full of mysteries that even gods didn't fully understand. But Luna was beginning to suspect that love might be the key to unlocking secrets that pure intellect could never reach. And if that theory proved correct, then her mother's worst fears about emotional attachment might actually be cosmic evolution's greatest hope. Time would tell. But for now, Luna was content to walk hand in hand with her impossible mate through a forest full of possibilities, weaving new patterns in the fabric of fate with every step they took together. After all, some rules weren't just meant to evolvia. Euros, they were meant to be transcended entirely. And transcendence, Luna was learning, was always a collaborative effort. 6 months after their first meeting, Luna and Fenris stood before an assembly of the most powerful supernatural beings in existence. The Great Convergence happened only once every century, bringing together representatives from every major pantheon, court, and cosmic hierarchy to address matters that affected reality itself. Luna had been dreading this moment since Selene announced that their experimental arrangement would be formally evaluated by the full assembly. Today, the cosmic powers would decide whether love between divine and mortal beings represented evolution or catastrophe. "Nervous?" Fenris asked quietly, his hand warm and steady in hers. "Terrified," Luna admitted. "You?" "Same," he replied with a crooked smile. "But it's a good kind of terrified, the kind that means what we're doing matters." Around them, the amphitheater of crystallized starlight buzzed with conversations in languages that predated human civilization. Luna could see representatives from pantheons she'd only heard of in whispered legends, Euros the Norse Aesir arguing with Egyptian Neteru, Greek Olympians trading barbs with Hindu devas, abstract concepts like time and space flickering in and out of comprehensible form. At the center of it all sat the primordial council, beings so ancient and powerful that looking directly at them required protective wards to prevent immediate dissolution. These were the entities that had shaped the fundamental laws of existence, and their judgment would be final. The assembly recognizes Luna, daughter of Selene, and her, companion, announced a herald whose voice somehow reached every corner of the vast amphitheater while remaining conversational in tone. Luna stepped forward, acutely aware that every eye in the assembly was focused on her with varying degrees of curiosity, suspicion, and outright hostility. Beside her, Fenris maintained his composed exterior, despite being the only purely mortal being in a gathering of cosmic entities. "You stand accused of violating fundamental cosmic law," the herald continued. "Specifically, the prohibition against divine beings forming romantic attachments to mortal creatures. How do you answer these charges?" "Guilty," Luna replied without hesitation. "But with the caveat that I believe the law itself to be flawed and in need of revision." A ripple of shocked murmurs ran through the assembly. No one had expected her to admit culpability so directly, and certainly not to challenge the validity of cosmic law itself. "Elaborate," commanded one of the primordial council members, their voice like the sound of galaxies being born. Luna took a deep breath and launched into the argument she'd been refining for months. She spoke of bond-crafting innovations that had only been possible through her emotional investment in the work. She described healing techniques that required genuine empathy rather than clinical detachment. She presented statistical evidence showing that her success rate in resolving supernatural conflicts had increased dramatically since forming her bond with Fenris. "Furthermore," Luna continued, warming to her theme, "the assumption that love compromises judgment is based on incomplete understanding of how emotional attachment actually functions. Love doesn't make me less objectivia eurose, makes me more invested in achieving optimal outcomes for all parties involved. Yet, emotional attachment creates bias," countered a representative from the Olympian faction. "How do we know your feelings for this mortal haven't influenced your decisions in ways that serve his interests over cosmic necessity?" Before Luna could respond, Fenris stepped forward. "May I address that concern?" The assembly fell silent, apparently fascinated by the audacity of a mortal requesting permission to speak before the cosmic powers. "Speak," granted the same primordial council member who had asked for elaboration. "Over the past 6 months," Fenris began, his voice carrying clearly despite the amphitheater's vast size, "Luna has made decisions that directly contradicted my personal preferences. On 17 separate occasions, she's prioritized cosmic stability over my comfort, assigned me duties that separated us for weeks at a time, and refused to use her power to eliminate threats to my life when doing so would have compromised her divine responsibilities." He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "If love had compromised her judgment, wouldn't she have chosen differently? The fact that she can prioritize duty over personal feelings when necessary suggests that emotional attachment enhances rather than undermines her decision-making process." "Interesting," mused another council member. "But what of the broader implications? If divine beings begin forming attachments to mortals wholesale, what becomes of cosmic order?" "Evolution," said a familiar voice from the edge of the assembly. Change materialized in their characteristic shifting form, apparently having decided to attend the proceedings after all. Their presence caused another stir among the assembled entities, many of whom had never encountered one of the fundamental forces in person. "Change," acknowledged the lead council member with what might have been amusement. "We wondered if you would make an appearance." "I rarely attend these gatherings," Change admitted, "but this case represents something genuinely unprecedented, not just in its specific circumstances, but in its potential implications for the future of existence itself." "Explain," commanded another council member. Change gestured to Luna and Fenris, their form solidifying enough to make the movement visible. What you see here isn't just a divine being who fell in love with a mortal. It's the emergence of an entirely new category of existentia Eurozar hybrid consciousness that combines the perspective of both realms while transcending the limitations of either. That sounds dangerously close to heresy, observed the Olympian representative. All evolution looks like heresy to those invested in the status quo, Change replied mildly. But consider the practical results. In 6 months, this partnership has resolved more intractable supernatural conflicts than most divine beings manage in centuries. They've developed bond-crafting techniques that are already being adopted across multiple pantheons. They've successfully purified shadow court corruption that had been considered irreversible. Isolated successes, argued another assembly member. Hardly evidence of systemic improvement. Are they? Change asked. Luna, would you care to share the results of your latest research? Luna felt her heart skip a beat. This was the moment she'd been dreading Euros when her secret experiments would be revealed to the cosmic powers before she'd had a chance to perfect her techniques. I've been developing new forms of divine-mortal collaboration, she said carefully, using my bond with Fenris as a template to explore whether similar partnerships might be beneficial in other contexts. And? Prompted the lead council member. Luna exchanged a quick glance with Fenris, drawing strength from his encouraging nod. The preliminary results suggest that divine beings, partnered with compatible mortals, show significant improvements in both power efficiency and problem-solving capability. The mortal perspective provides grounding and context that pure divine intellect often lacks, while divine power amplifies mortal intuition and empathy to unprecedented levels. You've been experimenting on other divine beings? The Olympian representative asked with obvious alarm. With volunteers only, Luna replied quickly, and under carefully controlled conditions. No permanent bonds have been established without full consent from all parties involved. How many? Asked a council member. 12 successful partnerships to date, Luna admitted, with a waiting list of 43 additional volunteers. The assembly erupted in shocked conversations as the implications of Luna's revelations sank in. She hadn't just violated cosmic law herself for Euros, she'd been systematically encouraging others to do the same. Silence, commanded the lead council member, their voice carrying enough authority to instantly quiet the entire amphitheatre. These are serious allegations. You claim to have facilitated dozens of divine mortal partnerships without authorization from this assembly. I claim to have facilitated evolution, Luna replied, her voice steady despite the cosmic pressure bearing down on her. The partnerships I've helped establish have strengthened rather than weakened the supernatural order. Every participant has shown measurable improvements in their assigned duties. Present your evidence, commanded another council member. Luna raised her hand and allowed her divine consciousness to project the results of her research into the amphitheatre's crystalline walls. Images and data streams flickered to life. Around them, showing before and after analyses of the volunteer partnerships she'd facilitated. A Norse Valkyrie partnered with a human military strategist, their combined abilities revolutionizing battlefield coordination among supernatural forces. A Greek river nymph bonded to a marine biologist, their collaboration leading to breakthroughs in healing polluted waterways. An Egyptian guardian spirit working with a trauma counselor, developing new methods for helping supernatural beings recover from psychic damage. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Every partnership Luna had facilitated had resulted in dramatic improvements in both efficiency and innovation. The divine beings involved were performing their cosmic duties better than ever before, while their mortal partners had gained abilities and insights that elevated them far beyond normal human limitations. Impressive results, admitted the Olympian representative grudgingly. But what of the risks? Divine power in mortal hands could be catastrophic if misused. Which is why the bonding process includes safeguards, Luna explained, highlighting relevant sections of her research. The connection between partners creates automatic feedback loops that prevent power abuse. If either individual attempts to use their abilities for purely selfish purposes, the bond itself provides correction. And what happens when the mortal partner dies? Asked a representative from the Celtic pantheon. Mortals have finite lifespans. Do the divine partners simply lose their enhanced abilities? Actually, Fenris interjected, that appears to be changing. All attention focused on him as he continued. The bonding process seems to extend mortal lifespan significantly. Not true immortality, but something approaching the longevity of long-lived supernatural species. I've aged perhaps a month in the 6 months since Luna and I bonded, despite previously aging at normal human rates. Fascinating, murmured Change. The bonds are automatically compensating for biological incompatibilities. Which raises another question, said a council member. If these partnerships are self-modifying and evolving, how do we maintain any semblance of control over their development? Perhaps, Luna suggested, carefully, control isn't the goal. Perhaps the goal should be guidance and support as these new forms of existence find their own paths. Anarchy, declared the Olympian representative. You're proposing to abandon cosmic law entirely. I'm proposing to evolve it, Luna corrected. Laws that can't adapt to changing circumstances become obstacles rather than guidance. The evidence suggests that divine mortal partnerships serve the greater good more effectively than rigid separation ever did. Even if that's true, said another assembly member, the precedent you're setting is dangerous. What happens when other divine beings decide they know better than cosmic law? What prevents chaos from consuming everything we've built? The same thing that's always prevented it, Change interjected. Consequences. The partnerships Luna has facilitated work because they're based on genuine compatibility and mutual benefit. Attempts to force inappropriate bonds or use the process for selfish gain fail automatically. You seem remarkably well informed about this process, observed a council member with what might have been suspicion. I've been observing from the beginning. Change admitted without shame. This represents the most significant evolutionary development in cosmic organization since the establishment of the original divine hierarchies. Of course I'm paying attention. And what's your assessment? Asked the lead council member. That attempting to suppress this evolution would be both futile and counterproductive, Change replied bluntly. The universe is already adapting to accommodate these new forms of existence. Fighting that adaptation will only create unnecessary conflict and suffering. The council members exchanged euros, or whatever passed for glances, among beings of their nature. Luna could sense rapid communication occurring on levels her divine consciousness couldn't quite access. cosmic calculations being performed at speeds that made light seem sluggish. We require additional data. The lead council member announced finally. Luna, daughter of Selene, you will be granted conditional authorization to continue your research under formal oversight. A monitoring committee will be established to track the long-term effects of these partnerships. Luna felt relief flood through her system, like liquid starlight. Thank you. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't, warned the Olympian representative. The moment these partnerships show signs of instability or abuse, this experiment ends permanently. Understood, Luna replied. There is one additional condition, added another council member. You will be required to establish formal protocols for bond evaluation and approval. No more unauthorized partnerships. Every potential bond must be assessed for compatibility and cosmic impact before implementation. Of course, Luna agreed, though part of her chafed at the bureaucratic restrictions being imposed on something that felt as natural as breathing. Furthermore, continued the same council member, you will be assigned a permanent liaison from this assembly to ensure compliance with all regulations and safety protocols. Who? Luna asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. I volunteer, said Change cheerfully. This promises to be the most interesting assignment in cosmic history. Several council members made sounds that might have been laughter. Very well, the lead member said. Change will serve as liaison and primary researcher for this ongoing experiment. Their reports will determine whether divine mortal partnerships represent evolution or devolution. Excellent, Change said, their form shifting to something more humanoid and approachable. When do we start the next phase? There's a next phase? Fenris asked with obvious trepidation. Oh yes, Change replied with enthusiasm that would have been alarming if Luna hadn't grown accustomed to their mercurial nature. Now that we've established the basic viability of divine mortal partnerships, we need to explore more complex configurations, triadic bonds, pantheon-wide collaborations, cross-species, experimentation. Euros, the possibilities are endless. One step at a time, Luna said quickly, recognizing the look of cosmic panic beginning to spread through the assembly. Let's perfect the basic partnerships before we start revolutionizing the entire supernatural hierarchy. Wise counsel, agreed the lead council member. This assembly is adjourned. Luna and her research team will report their progress at the next convergence. As the cosmic entities began to disperse, dissolving back into whatever realms they'd emerged from, Luna felt a mixture of triumph and trepidation. They had won acceptance for their revolutionary approach, but that acceptance came with scrutiny and restrictions that would make every future decision a matter of cosmic debate. How do you feel? Fenris asked as they watched the amphitheatre empty around them. Like we just convinced the universe to let us rewrite its fundamental laws, Luna replied. Terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Don't forget exhausting, Fenris added with a tired smile. I think I used up a lifetime's worth of courage in that one speech. You were magnificent, Luna said, turning to face him fully. I couldn't have done this without you. We're partners, Fenris replied simply. That's what partners don you Euros. They make each other stronger. Speaking of which, Change interjected, materializing beside them with their characteristic lack of regard for personal space. We should probably discuss the formal protocols Luna promised to establish. The council wasn't joking about wanting oversight. Luna sighed, already feeling the weight of bureaucracy settling on her shoulders. I suppose we'll need application procedures, compatibility assessments, safety evaluations, psychological profiles, power analysis, risk mitigation strategies, Change added helpfully. Oh, and we'll need to establish a review board to handle appeals and complaints. This is going to be complicated, Fenris observed. Everything worthwhile is complicated, Change replied, echoing their earlier wisdom. But complexity doesn't have to mean impossibility. We just need to build systems that support evolution rather than constraining it. Any suggestions on where to start? Luna asked. With the volunteers you already have, Change said practically. Study what made their partnerships successful. Identify common factors. Develop predictive models. The universe loves patterns euros. Give it clear patterns to follow, and it will adapt accordingly. Luna nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. The formal recognition of their work opened doors she'd never imagined, but it also created responsibilities that would test every aspect of their partnership. There's something else, Change said, their tone becoming more serious. The Shadow Court remnants are regrouping. Morrigan's defeat scattered them temporarily, but they're organizing under new leadership. Your success here today will make you an even bigger target. Let them come, Fenris said, with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced cosmic forces and survived. We're not the same people who stumbled into this 6 months ago. No, Luna agreed, feeling the solid strength of their bond humming beneath her consciousness. We're something new, something they won't know how to fight. Just remember, Change warned. Evolution always faces resistance from those who benefit from the status quo. The bigger your success, the more desperate your enemies will become. Then we'll have to succeed bigger and faster than they can organize. Luna replied with a smile that would have made her mother proud. As they prepared to leave the cosmic amphitheater and return to their work in the mortal realm, Luna reflected on how much had changed since that first night in the forest clearing. She had begun as a dutiful daughter, following cosmic law without question. Now she was a revolutionary architect of new realities, partnered with an impossible mate and authorized to reshape the fundamental relationship between divine and mortal existence. The irony wasn't lost on her, that her mother's worst fears about emotional attachment had become the catalyst for the most significant advancement in cosmic organization in millennia. Love hadn't made Luna less effective at her divine dutyessa. Eurozet had revealed entirely new categories of effectiveness that pure duty could never achieve. Ready to change the world? Fenris asked, offering her his hand. Ready to let the world change itself, Luna corrected, taking his hand and feeling their bond pulse with shared determination. We're just going to give it better tools to work with. Together they stepped through the portal that would return them to Earth, to the endless work of weaving new patterns in the fabric of existence. Behind them, Change watched with the satisfaction of a force that had successfully nudged reality toward its next evolutionary phase. After all, some transformations were too important to leave to chance. Sometimes the universe needed a little help recognizing its own potential for growth. And sometimes, Change reflected with cosmic amusement, the best way to help something evolve was to introduce it to the revolutionary power of love. The story of Luna and Fenris was far from over. Eurosat was really just beginning. But already their bond had proven that the impossible wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. Evolution always found a way, especially when guided by hearts brave enough to love beyond the boundaries of law and tradition. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but Luna was beginning to understand that the greatest mystery of all wasn't cosmic mechanics or divine mathematica. Eurozet was the infinite creativity that emerged when two souls recognized their perfect complement in each other and chose to build something beautiful together. Some rules were meant to be broken. Others were meant to be transcended entirely. And love, Luna had learned, was the force that taught the difference. 1 year after the Great Convergence, Luna stood in what had once been an empty cosmic academy and marveled at how quickly evolution could reshape reality when given proper support. The Institute for Divine Mortal Collaboration now sprawled across several dimensional planes, its crystalline halls filled with the sounds of excited conversation in dozens of languages, as partnerships formed, studied, and pushed the boundaries of what was possible. The Celtic delegation just arrived, Fenris announced, entering her office with his arms full of administrative scrolls that never seemed to diminish no matter how efficiently they processed them. They're bringing 12 new partnership candidates. Excellent, Luna replied, though part of her still marveled at the casual way her impossible mate discussed delegations of ancient gods. Are they requesting standard compatibility assessments, or the advanced resonance analysis? Advanced, Fenris said, settling into the chair across from her desk that had been specially designed to accommodate his not-quite-mortal-anymore physiology. Apparently they've heard about the breakthrough the Egyptian team achieved last month. Luna smiled at the memory. The partnership between a goddess of healing and a quantum physicist had resulted in medical techniques that operated on both cellular and spiritual levels simultaneously, revolutionizing treatment for supernatural ailments that had plagued divine beings for millennia. Speaking of breakthroughs, Fenris continued with the slightly worried expression he wore whenever Change had been particularly enthusiastic about something. Our favorite force of nature wants to discuss expanding the program to include elemental spirits. Elementals? Luna's eyebrows rose. Those aren't exactly known for their emotional stability. Change believes that's precisely why they need partnership opportunities, Fenris explained. Apparently, elemental rage and chaos significantly decrease when they're bonded to compatible mortals who can provide grounding and perspective. That's... Luna paused, considering the implications. Actually brilliant. Elemental disasters have been increasing over the past century as environmental damage affects their domains. If partnerships could help them find constructive outlets for their distress, it would solve several problems at once, Fenris agreed. Though the safety protocols would need to be extensive. Fire elementals in particular have a tendency to express affection through combustion. Before Luna could respond, a gentle chime indicated an approaching visitor. The office's crystalline walls became transparent to reveal Celine waiting in the corridor outside, her expression unreadable as always. "Mother," Luna said, rising to greet her parent with a mixture of affection and wariness. Celine's visits had become more frequent over the past year, though her purpose remained frustratingly opaque. "Luna, Fenris." Celine inclined her head to both of them with equal courtesy, a gesture that still surprised Luna despite its consistency. "I hope I'm not interrupting important work." "Never," Luna replied automatically, though she couldn't quite hide her curiosity about the timing of the visit. "I wanted to discuss the quarterly reports you've been submitting to the council," Celine said, settling into the third chair that had materialized to accommodate her presence. The success rates continue to exceed all projections. The partnerships work because they're based on genuine compatibility, Luna explained, settling back into her own chair. When divine and mortal natures complement each other naturally, the results are remarkable. Indeed, Celine agreed. Which brings me to the real purpose of my visit. The Council has decided to expand your authorization. Luna felt her heart skip a beat. Expand it how? You're being granted permission to establish satellite institutes on 12 additional planes of existence, Celine announced. The demand for partnership opportunities has grown beyond what this single facility can accommodate. 12 new institutes? Fenris repeated, sounding slightly stunned. That's massive, Luna finished. Mother, that's an enormous undertaking. The coordination alone would require, which is why you'll be working with a team of administrators, Celine interrupted smoothly. Change has volunteered to oversee the expansion, along with several council members who have developed interests in your methods. Luna exchanged a glance with Fenris, reading the same mixture of excitement and trepidation in his expression that she felt bubbling in her own chest. A year ago, they had been an impossible experiment. Now, they were apparently the foundation for a cosmic-wide transformation of divine-mortal relations. There's something else, Celine continued, her tone becoming more personal. I owe you an apology. An apology? Luna repeated, certain she had misheard. When you first formed your bond with Fenris, I believed it represented a catastrophic failure of judgment, Celine admitted. I was convinced that emotional attachment would compromise your divine effectiveness and potentially destabilize cosmic order. You weren't wrong to be concerned, Luna said diplomatically. I was wrong about everything, Celine corrected firmly. Your partnership hasn't just maintained cosmic stability, it's enhanced it beyond anything we achieved through separation and isolation. The innovations you've developed, the problems you've solved, the hope you've given to beings who thought themselves incompatible with happiness. I was blind to possibilities I should have recognized centuries ago. Luna felt tears gathering in her eyes at her mother's words. For an immortal being to admit error was unprecedented. For the moon goddess to do so represented a fundamental shift in cosmic perspective. I'm proud of you, Celine continued quietly. Both of you. You've proven that evolution isn't something to be feared, but something to be embraced and guided. You've shown that love enhances wisdom rather than compromising it. Thank you, Luna whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Though I do have one concern, Celine added with a slight smile. Your latest research proposals suggest you're contemplating even more radical experiments. Cross-Pampean partnerships, divine beings bonding with supernatural creatures from entirely different cosmic systems? The universe is vast, Luna replied, recovering her composure. There's no reason to limit compatibility to traditional categories. Just promise me you'll be careful, Celine said, rising from her chair. The forces you're working with have the potential to reshape reality itself. That's both an incredible opportunity and an enormous responsibility. We understand, Fenris assured her. Every partnership we facilitate comes with safeguards and oversight. Good, Celine nodded approvingly. Because change tells me you have applications pending from entities I've never even heard of. Something called quantum consciousness manifestations and temporal echo beings. The applications come from everywhere now, Luna explained. Word has spread beyond our local cosmic neighborhood. Beings from dimensions we didn't know existed are requesting partnership opportunities. Which raises interesting questions about the fundamental nature of consciousness and connection, Fenris added with the enthusiasm he'd developed for the theoretical aspects of their work. If our bonding process works across dimensional barriers, what does that tell us about the underlying structure of existence? That some patterns are truly universal, Celine replied thoughtfully. And that love may be an even more fundamental force than we previously understood. After Celine departed, leaving behind authorization documents and expansion plans that would keep them busy for decades, Luna and Fenris sat in comfortable silence processing the magnitude of what their small rebellion had become. Any regrets? Fenris asked, their traditional question now tinged with amused affection rather than genuine concern. Only that we can't move faster, Luna replied. Every day we delay expanding the program is another day that compatible beings remain isolated and incomplete. Spoken like a true revolutionary, Fenris said with pride. Though, I have to admit, sometimes I miss the simplicity of our early days together, when it was just us against the cosmic order. Now it's us working with the cosmic order to build something better, Luna pointed out. I think that's an improvement. Definitely an improvement, Fenris agreed. Though I do worry about maintaining our connection as the work grows more complex. We're surrounded by people now, always in meetings or evaluating applications or troubleshooting partnership problems. Luna felt a flutter of concern at his words, because he was right. The demands of their expanding responsibilities had left less time for the quiet moments that had originally allowed their bond to deepen and stabilize. Date night, she said impulsively. What? We need regular date nights. Scheduled time that's just for us, away from the Institute and the cosmic bureaucracy, and all the beings who want our help. Luna felt the rightness of the idea, settling into her bones. If we're going to help others build strong partnerships, we need to maintain our own. I love that idea, Fenris said, his smile brightening to solar intensity. Where should we go for our first official date night? Somewhere completely unconnected to our work, Luna replied. Maybe that little cave Atilda copyright in Prague you mentioned? The one that serves chocolate that tastes like condensed starlight? Perfect, Fenris agreed. Though we should probably warn Change that we'll be unreachable for a few hours. They have a tendency to panic when they can't find us immediately. As if summoned by their conversation, Change materialized in the office with their characteristic disregard for privacy or personal space. Did someone mention my name? Oh good, you're both here. I have exciting news about the Elemental Partnership Program. It can wait, Luna said firmly, surprising both Change and herself with her decisiveness. Fenris and I are taking the evening off. Off? Change repeated the word, as if it were foreign. But we have 17 new applications to review, and the Celtic delegation wants to discuss expanding their program to include seasonal spirits and a Euros. Change, Fenris interrupted gently. Do you remember what you told us about evolution requiring balance? Of course, Buta Euros. Well, balance includes rest and personal time, Luna explained. If we burn ourselves out trying to help everyone immediately, we won't be able to help anyone effectively. Change stared at them for a moment, their form flickering between states as they processed this concept. You're taking time off to strengthen your bond so you can be more effective at helping others strengthen their bonds. Exactly, Luna confirmed. That's... Change paused, their expression shifting to something that might have been wonder. That's actually brilliant. Recursive optimization through personal maintenance. Why didn't I think of that? Because you're a force of nature, not a relationship counselor, Fenris replied with fond exasperation. Now, can the 17 applications wait until tomorrow? I suppose they'll have to, Change said, though they looked physically pained by the delay. But I'm scheduling emergency protocols for any genuine crises that arise while you're optimizing. Fair enough, Luna agreed, already imagining the peace of a few hours away from cosmic son. Responsibilities. As they prepared to leave for their impromptu date, Luna reflected on how much their lives had changed and how much had remained constant. They were no longer the impossible pair of rebels hiding their connection from cosmic authority. Now they were the foundation of a movement that was reshaping the fundamental nature of divine existence. But, at their core, they were still Luna and Fenrisa Eurazatu beings who had found in each other a completion they hadn't known they were missing. That bond remained the strongest constant in their lives, the anchor that allowed them to weather every challenge and embrace every opportunity. Ready? Fenris asked, offering her his hand with the same gallant gesture he'd used during their first meeting. Always, Luna replied, taking his hand and feeling their bond pulse with warm contentment. Together they stepped through a portal that would take them far from institutes and councils and cosmic bureaucracy to a small Cafe Tilda copyright in a mortal city where they could simply be themselves without the weight of totter. Universal expectations. Because even revolutionaries needed chocolate that tasted like starlight sometimes. And even cosmic forces needed to remember, but the best changes often began with the simplest gestures of love. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but Luna had learned that the greatest mysteries weren't written in the movements of stars or the mathematics of divine law. They were written in the quiet moments between heartbeats, in the spaces where two souls recognized their perfect complement and chose to build something beautiful together. Some transformations happened in grand gestures witnessed by cosmic assemblies. Others happened in small Cafe Tilda copyright S over cups of impossible chocolate, in the gentle pressure of joined hands and the comfortable silence of beings who had found their home in each other. Both were necessary. Both were miraculous. And both, Luna realized as she watched Fenris's face light up with simple joy at the prospect of stolen time together, were expressions of the same fundamental force that had started their story and would continue, writing it across infinite tomorrows. Love, it turned out, was not just the key to understanding cosmic law. It was the force that wrote the laws in the first place, one impossible partnership at a time.